For the start of the new year, I thought it'd be a great time to look back at some of my favorite different types of tech and see how much they've evolved over the past year. For this video, I'm going to do smartphones. What sort of advancements have we seen? Are there any up and coming trends that we should keep an eye on for the new year? And how has the business evolved as a whole? Especially given the context of things like the pandemic, supply chain issues, and labor shortages. All the answers and more can be found here at Techonomics. Hey, it's Carlos, always trying to provide you with an insight on technology and how it's affecting you and the world at large. I find all of this to be extremely important because we can only make better decisions about the future if we have a solid look at the past. So let's get some context. So before we get into all the cool trends and what we can expect in the future of smartphones, let's ground ourselves with the money. And why is this important? Well, how much product a company is able to ship is an extremely solid indicator of how successful that company is doing. The only real counter to this being profit margin, because if you have a bigger profit margin, you can sell less product. But as always in business, it's a give and take. You have to find a balance between the two to maximize profits. Here you can see the percentage of smartphone shipments by quarter and company over the past 3 years. And it's pretty obvious that Samsung has continually had the top spot, and this year hasn't changed at all. What has changed is that Apple, which is continuously in second, seems to be gaining a percentage or two. Another thing I would like to point out is that Xiaomi, which was sitting at anywhere between 6 to 8% only 3 years ago, has doubled their market share, while other leading Chinese brands like Vivo and Oppo have increased as well, though by a significantly smaller margin. Why is that? Well, the most obvious reason is Huawei. The largest tech brand in China until recently has essentially collapsed internationally. Because of fears of safety and national security, countries around the globe have heavily restricted their reach and usability, to the point that they are virtually unattainable, if not unusable, in most leading markets. As you can see here, it has greatly affected their market share. While just 2 years ago they were leading the industry with an incredible 18.4%, now they've dropped all the way to 7.2%, showing how valuable the global market is to true financial success. As I mentioned before, shipments aren't everything. If you have a high profit margin, that can more than make up for it. Case in point, Apple. Their shipments are already high, but as you can see here, their operating profit is obscene as a percentage of the market compared to their competition. And while many can complain that they could be selling their products for significantly lower, the reality is that while I do hate on Apple a ton, their products are comparable, at least for the most part, compared to the competition. So they have no real reason to do so. Furthermore, they have plenty of reasons not to, and it isn't just corporate greed. Recently, TSMC, the largest chip manufacturer, revealed their top customers, and Apple sat at the top with over 25% of their business. They don't get that sort of preferential treatment by paying what everyone else does. They obviously have to pay more for their chips. And that has allowed them to have a more secure supply chain, which has greatly contributed to their lack of supply disruptions throughout the pandemic. This is all to say that they are spending their excess profit wisely, and it is, all in all, a long-term business decision, and a smart one at that. That's probably why they've gained that 1% in market share too. Well, enough with all this nerdy money talk. Now that we know who the winners and losers were financially throughout the year, what were the smartphone hits and misses? So, what were the big trends in smartphones in 2021? Well, the most obvious one is probably foldables. Foldables have been around for about 3 years now, since the Samsung Galaxy Fold, but this year they really took off. Samsung released the Galaxy Z Fold 3 and their Z Flip 3, and the best part is that they massively reduced the price compared to their predecessors. This was so effective that the Z Flip 3 became the most popular smartphone in South Korea, Samsung's home market. But the foldable craze doesn't end there. Chinese manufacturers also wanted to jump into the bandwagon. Huawei released their Mate X2 to compete with the likes of the Z Fold. Xiaomi, trying to take advantage of Huawei's decreasing market share, released the Xiaomi Mix Fold, and Oppo, not wanting to be outdone, just barely managed to release the Oppo Find N at the end of 2021. It's crystal clear that foldable smartphones are a trend that are going to continue well into this year. And the biggest question on my mind is how much more can manufacturers lower the price of these products so that they can be more attainable for your average consumer? Another big smartphone trend for 2021 is custom silicon. Apple has always had their own in-house chips for their smartphones, and Samsung has too, only they were limited to specific markets. But the number of manufacturers that are foregoing the Qualcomm Snapdragon chips for their own custom silicon is growing. Huawei is a great example, though they've mostly been forced to do so because of international regulations preventing them from doing business with other chip manufacturers. The one that really shook the industry was when Google announced that they made their new Pixel phone with a homegrown chip called Tensor. And Oppo just announced their own smartphone microprocessor as well. Qualcomm's monopoly over the smartphone chip space is dying, and I'm hopeful that all this custom chips will lead to better competition, lower prices, and better performance because of a more solid integration with hardware. The bigger question is what other companies are going to do to follow suit. And the only other major trends that I see in the smartphone world are 5G connectivity and under-display front-facing cameras. The camera trend is extremely limited and still in its early stages, which can be seen by the fact that there aren't any flagships with it yet, but only mid-range phones as to focus on developing the technology further. The 5G trend is more obvious. All around the world, 5G infrastructure is developing, and smartphones need to advance with it, and not just the expensive ones. So now even mid-range and low-tier phones are coming out with 5G compatibility. Now that the trends are clear, why don't I give a couple of predictions to what I think 2022 holds for smartphones? I'll keep this part really quick. For one, I think we'll finally see a full screen smartphone, to the point that it's going to be a major selling point of the product. The first manufacturer that comes to mind to do something like this would probably be Samsung, but if not them, then I can see Google or maybe Xiaomi doing it. I also think we'll see more foldables than ever before. The Z Flip 3 showed Samsung how successful it can be, so they'll probably go all in on foldables and expand it in some way. They might even make the lineup of foldables even larger, so expect something like that in the future. Also, look for brands that don't already have foldable phones to come out with them too. Maybe even someone like Google who you might not otherwise expect that from. The last thing is that this might finally be the year that curved displays die. I personally love them, but the industry seems to be moving away from them, and given their increased cost, it might finally be the time to nip it right in the bud. Hey, thanks for watching another video, guys. Really do appreciate it, as always. Please hit that like button if you want to see more videos like this one. Also, comment down below with your thoughts on my analysis of the smartphone industry in 2021. Are there any trends that I missed, or are there any predictions that you think we'll see? Comment down below and let me know. As always, it's Carlos from Techonomics, over and out.